Hi, fifth grade. Miss Bishop here, and we're going to be talking about how to find the area of a right triangle. So the first thing I'm going to do before we dive into this is to show you this shape. And this is a shape that we're really familiar with, and this is called a rectangle. I'm showing you a rectangle because this right here is actually going to help us figure out the area of right triangles, and I'll show you how in just a second. So what you have in front of you is a 8-inch by 5-inch rectangle. Okay, so what I want you to do is think about what would be the area of this rectangle. This is something we've already kind of talked about and we've worked a lot with. So I want you to think about what would be the area of a rectangle that's 8 inches long and 5 inches wide. While you think about that, I'm going to draw something real quick. Okay, so I hope you have an answer. And what you can see here is I went ahead and drew our square units on our rectangle. Why did I do that? Because I wanted to remind you that area is the number of square units in your rectangle. Okay, so if you came up with the answer of 40 inches squared or 40 square units, you're on a good path here. So we have 40 square units in our rectangle. Another way to figure that out is hopefully you just did 8 inches by 5 inches, and that gives you all 40 square units. You can also draw in your square units to help you find the area, but either way, it's an array. So that's also an easy way to kind of figure out, well, what is the area of my my 2D shape or my flat shape. So I have 8 inches by 5 inches. Okay, so we have 40 square units here, and what we're going to do is we're going to take this rectangle and we're going to cut it, and we're going to cut it on a diagonal, and you're going to see what happens to our shape, which is hopefully going to help make sense why we're doing area of a right triangle. Okay, all right, so I just took our rectangle and I went ahead and cut it on a diagonal. And when I did that, I made 2 more shapes. Now, what's really important to know about a rectangle? Well, a rectangle is a rectangle because it has 4 right angles. Where are the 4 right angles? They're in all of the corners or the vertices of our rectangle. So when you cut a rectangle on a diagonal, look what happens. You actually make 2 right triangles. So why is that important? Because knowing how to find the area of our rectangle is going to help us find the area of our right triangle. So let's go back to our original rectangle. So the original rectangle had an area of 40 square inches. So what do you think the area would be of each of our right triangles? So think about that for a second. Our rectangle was 40 square inches. I cut my rectangle in half, so what is the area going to be for each of our right triangles? Hopefully you have something in your head. Okay. So if you're thinking about 20, if you're thinking 20 square inches, you're absolutely right. So this right here is 40 square inches. When you cut a rectangle in half, you get the area of the right triangle, or one of the right triangles. So this is 20 square inches and this is 20 square inches. So that's the information we're going to use today to help us figure out the area of right triangles. So once again, just a reminder, what is a right triangle? So a right triangle is a triangle that has one 90-degree angle. For example, if you're looking at this figure over here, you see a lot of squares and rectangles. So if this rectangle right here were 1 square unit, what would be the area of this right triangle? And it would be half of a square unit, just because we know a right triangle is half of a rectangle. So let's apply some of this thinking to some other examples. So let's look at this example right here. We've got um, a triangle, and it says draw and label a triangle with a base of 5 feet and a height of 10 feet. So this part of our triangle is called our base. This part of our triangle is called the height. So you've got your base and your height. Now, another way to kind of think about that is, what if this were a rectangle? Well, as you can see, we kind of drew our rectangle here. We drew our rectangle here. So if this were our rectangle, that would be half of the rectangle. So the base and height of a right triangle is the length and width of the rectangle. So if you know the length and width of your rectangle, that is also the same thing as your base and height for your right triangle. Well, what do we know about finding the area of a rectangle? We know if we multiply our length times our width times length, we get the area of our rectangle. So if that's true, we should be able to multiply our base and our height to get the area of our right triangle, but keeping in mind that our right triangle is half of our rectangle. So we can't use the area of the rectangle, we have to use the area that is half of the rectangle, because a right triangle is half of a rectangle. So let's do that calculation. So we know to find the area, we have to multiply our length times our width. In this case, we're doing a triangle, so that's going to be our base times our height. So 5 foot, I don't know if you can see that very well. Let me change pens. So 5 foot times, oh, that's much better. So 5 foot times 10 foot, that's going to be 50 feet squared. Now keep in mind, 50 feet squared is going to be the area of the entire rectangle. The entire rectangle. We're not interested in finding the area of the rectangle. We're only interested in finding the area of the right triangle. And we know from our activity that we just did that a right triangle is half of a rectangle. So in order to figure out what the area of the right triangle is, we're going to have to take the area of the rectangle and divide it into 2. So if I have 50 and if I have 50 feet squared, or 50 square feet, I know half of 50 is going to be 25 25 feet squared. So the area of this triangle is actually 25 feet squared. So this triangle would be 25 feet squared, and the triangle over here will be 25 feet squared. So to find the area of a right triangle is actually pretty easy if you already know how to find the area of a rectangle. It's simply just taking the area of that rectangle and dividing it in to 2 parts. All right, let's do another example. All right, so we've got 2 different right triangles here. We've got an 8 by 5, which is just like the example we just did on our paper, but this is a good way to show it again. So we've got an 8 by 5, so this would be considered our base. The 8 foot would be considered our height. In the same way that this 8 foot, if it were the rectangle, would be considered our length. And the same way that the base would be considered our width. Okay, same thing over here with this rectangle. The 4 meters would be considered our base. And the 12 meters would be considered our height. Just like this would be our width and this would be our length. So what do we know about finding the area? We know that if we multiply our length times our width, or in this case we're doing a triangle, our base times our height, we can get the area of our rectangle. So 8 times 5, so 8 feet times 5 foot, that's going to be 40 feet squared. But remember, 40 feet squared is going to be the area of the entire rectangle. So that's the area of the rectangle. All right, we want to just know the area of the right triangle though, which in the right triangle is going to be half. So half of 40 feet squared, so 40 feet squared, right? 40, oh, that's wrong. 40 feet squared divided by 2 is going to be 20 feet squared. So this right triangle is 20 feet squared, and this right triangle is 20 feet squared for a total of 40 square feet for the rectangle. Okay, moving down here to our rectangle with a length of 12 and a width of 4, and then our triangle that has a base of 4 and a height of 12. So once again, we're going to find the area of our rectangle first, and our rectangle is 12 meters times 4 meters. So we have a length of 12 and we have a width of 4 meters. So 12 times 4 is 48 meters squared. So remember, keeping in mind that's the area of the rectangle, that's not the area of the right triangle. To find the area of just the right triangle, we're going to have to take that right triangle and we're going to have to take that area of the rectangle and split it in half. So 48 divided by 2 is going to be 12, I'm sorry, nope, I'm wrong about that, 24 meters squared. So half of 48 is 24. So this right triangle is 24 meters squared, and so is this triangle over here. So the area of the right triangle is always going to be half of what that right triangle, half of what the rectangle measurement is going to be. Okay. Now sometimes you're going to be given a right triangle and you're not going to be given or shown what the original square or rectangle looks like. So you might get something like this where you're just given a right triangle where you're given the base, so 4 centimeters would be considered the base, and 9 centimeters, that would be considered the height here. Okay, so but the same concept applies. You can also kind of look at this and think, okay, well, you know what I can do? I can actually draw, you know, what that rectangle would have looked like if it weren't split into that right triangle. So you can kind of see that this would have been the original rectangle before that right triangle was cut from half of that rectangle. So the same concept applies. We're not going to change what we've been doing. We're just going to do the same strategy. So what are we going to have to do? We're going to have to do our base times our height. So we're going to do 4 centimeters times 9 centimeters. And 4 centimeters times 9 centimeters is going to be 36 centimeters squared. Now remember, that's not the area of the right triangle though. That's the area of the entire rectangle. So when you're thinking about what the area of just the right triangle is, remember you always have to take this amount and you have to divide it by 2. So we're going to take 36 centimeters squared divided by 2. 36 centimeters squared divided by 2 is going to be 18 centimeters squared. So the area of the right triangle is just going to be 18 centimeters squared. Okay, so it's always half of what the original rectangle area would have been. So all right, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video about finding the area of a right triangle. Remember, keep in mind that right triangles are always half of a rectangle, so the easiest way to figure out that area of the right triangle is to figure out the area of the rectangle and then divide it by 2. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll talk to you soon.